And I came out of that hospital with just a fire in my belly. I'm going to change this. I'm not happy. I've done it. I've scaled a business and it's not for me. Thank you very much. So every time someone left, we didn't replace them. Gradually it petered down, but then profits went up. So
the irony, right?
What's not to love? Yeah.
Thank you for joining me on the Recruiters Recruitment Podcast and allowing me to introduce to you somebody who I can call a friend. I've known her for over 20 years. We actually work together in a guise, which we do explain in the interview today, and why I believe and why she's a perfect example that coming from an industry really sets you apart, particularly in sectors where you are dealing with senior level hires. We talk around what it's like to actually work with your husband or partner or spouse or family member. And if you are working for somebody in that dynamic, what lessons we can learn from that. And then we get really quite profound because we talk about how a significant life event that happened in Caroline's life really changed her whole perception and outlook and her future business strategy. This is Caroline Kingsley, and I cannot wait for you to get to know her and her business, Kingsley Property. Let's go. This is Lysha Holmes, and I'm your host on the Recruiters Recruitment Podcast. And there are occasions where I invite somebody to come on the show who I've known for that long. I can't imagine that I've ever not known them, if that makes sense. And bearing in mind, my Rec to Rec career is now 24 years old as I record this. I don't think I've known you quite that long, but it probably feels like we've gone through every kind of economic, geopolitical, human storm. And this is somebody who I hold very dear and I call a very, very firm recruitment friend. And I can't wait for you, our global audience, to get to know her today. Looking resplendent in a very regal green, I have to say, in this beautiful vista, which is in the most beautiful part of the Northwest, which I'll let her explain. So without further ado, this is Caroline Kingsley, who is the co-founder of Kingsley Property Recruitment. Hello, Caroline.
Hello, thank you for that lovely introduction. And yes, I'd rather not think about how long we've known each other.
It will be. Well, I started in Rec to Rec in 2002, and I think you were one of the first people I ever tried to headhunt, and I did. I was headhunting you for years, and you never bit. You never bit.
Sorry. Well, we're good friends anyway.
Yeah, you are.
Oh, no, thanks for inviting me. So yeah, I'm Caroline Kingsley. I have been in property recruitment for a very long time. Since 2004, I started and set up my own business in 2007. I think we were talking a lot at that point because that was a really good year. And then the next year wasn't quite so much fun for those of us who are old enough to remember 2008. And I scaled the business. I've scaled it back, but I'm sure we'll talk about that as we go along. But yeah, I'm based in Birkdale near Southport. It's a beautiful sunny day today.
It is. As we record this in March, we've had one of those weird Marches where you've had a whole set
of we've had everything.
Ale, and it's been very big.
Snow a bit. Yeah, it's been awful.
If you are listening to this in the UK and you've never visited Southport, I want you to give me a one-liner as to why everyone should jump in the car and come and visit.
The beach. You need to, if you have a dog, come to the beach. It's huge. 7 miles of beach.
Is it that long? I mean, I grew up pretty much on Southport Beach because you can drive your car onto Southport Beach. So I can imagine now, looking back now as a parent, albeit of adult children, I was one of 5. So you can imagine how easy that must have been for my parents to go, what can we do with 5 feral kids, all different ages? Because you can play around as you've got the baby, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was 7 miles. That's crazy.
It's a great walk. We'll have to do it one day.
Yeah, no, we should actually. Let's not just keep saying that. Let's do it. Well, that's not what the podcast is about, guys. Don't worry about it. I love showcasing parts of the UK that it's crazy, isn't it? That, I mean, I'm sure there's parts of the UK that I've never been to that I really should go to. And I think let's start loving our country more than, the media would have us allow right now.
For sure.
So, I know that you said that you came into recruitment in 2004, but you had, I think, and I maintain, a very unique journey into recruitment. So give us a sort of an initial bio as to how that happened.
Yeah, so I graduated and worked in surveying. So I was a surveyor for almost 5 years, working for 3 different companies. Um, some of it I really loved, some of it I didn't love quite so much, like standing on a school roof and having your ladder nicked by a kid. That wasn't fun.
How did you get
Me
down?
shouting. Shouting a lot. Yeah, I think when you're a graduate, you get some really great jobs, don't you? You get some. So I was really fortunate. One of my projects was a huge £90 million MOD redevelopment up at Catterick. That was good fun, and I learned a lot. But then you get some really mundane jobs, like counting the different types of windows on the Liver building. Can you imagine in the pouring rain?
Wow.
So sort of trying different types of organization, I just thought this isn't for me. I like it. I like the industry. I like the people. But I don't like the job. And I didn't dare tell my parents sort of after putting me through uni, "Oh, I don't want to do this anymore." Anyway, I went to a recruitment company to find another job and they just said, "Well, you didn't like the last one, so I think it's the job, it's not, and it's you." So it's just said, "Have you thought about recruitment?" I don't even really know what that is. Anyway, fast forward 20 plus years, and yeah, I'm still in it and I still love it.
And I mean, I love that kind of provenance because I've often mused that I think if you've got either industry knowledge, which gives you instant credibility and presumably gives you, certainly in your first couple of years, access to people that maybe recruiters wouldn't have.
Yeah.
And I like to say passion for the industry. And I think, very often I interview people who are ex-lawyers, for example, ex-medical professionals, maybe me as a rec to rec, actually, because I've worked in 3 different recruitment markets before I set up my rec to rec business. I just think it gives you an advantage that if you hadn't done the job,
100%.
I mean, what would you say about that?
Does. It does. It gives you instant credibility. Particularly, I recruit quite technical roles, so you have the knowledge. Although it's moving at a really fast pace, so you've got to keep up once you've left the industry. But you have that knowledge, and as you say, I'd come from a company with over 4,000 staff in the UK,
Wow.
and I'd worked in 3 of the offices, so I knew so many people, and you could just tap into that network, which, as you say, other recruiters just didn't have access to. So it does give you an edge. Not always, I wouldn't say you have to have it, but
Mm.
it gives you a confidence, I think, talking to more senior people, particularly when you're just starting out and you're only maybe in your 20s.
I was going to say there's an element of kind of I'm going to be slightly contradictory here because I have often used this example of why you shouldn't make an assumption just because you've got industry knowledge that you'll make a great recruiter. So I think it's
Yeah.
important to have a caveat when we're thinking about hiring people. I did engineering recruitment. That was my first recruitment job, probably around similar time to you starting out. And I was top biller within first year and I loved it. I loved people. I was curious. I didn't really understand what they did, but I was just so interested in what they were doing. They were designing the bits of machinery that went into airplanes, into cars, into machines. And it was just like, oh my God, that's so interesting. Show me. And, I realized now that made me a really good recruiter. And my company hired in an engineer and she was a female engineer. You can imagine they were just like, oh my God, this is going to be amazing. And she was such a dreadful recruiter. So I had to mentor her with no management training. I had to mentor her, and she'd sit in interviews and she would tell them what they did for their job. She wouldn't ask them any questions. So I think the caveat is always that I think it gives you that credibility because they'll go and look at you on a living CV, which is LinkedIn. But I think you have to have those recruitment traits to be able to then position them both symbiotically.
No, I didn't have that to start with. I
Right.
was a geeky surveyor, and going into this recruitment business where everybody knew each other and they were ultra confident, and I didn't like it at first. And my plan was I'll do 12 months and then I'm going traveling, I'm going backpacking. And in that first 12 months, I wouldn't make calls in front of anybody. I'd disappear off to the toilet, or I'd work. There was one night I went home and I came back at sort of 7 o'clock once everybody had gone. And I did 2 hours doing my calls because I just didn't. It was that kind of environment, you think, like 2005.
Mm.
Uh, Everyone just took the mickey out of you, and I
Yeah,
wasn't
there wasn't
confident
much
enough.
or diversity.
There was no HR.
But that I never knew that about you, by the way. And thank you for sharing that, because that says to me that you're possibly more introverted than this stereotypical. I'd like to think we've moved away from that, but certainly around that time, those noughties and 90s and noughties mentality of, the brash, get on the phone. And I've never subscribed to that, because to me, yes, that people often think that is what I'm like, but I'm actually not like that in business. I'm very calm. I'm a real listener. And I didn't know that you'd sneak back in the office. But I bet that's
I
why you were
did.
successful so quickly, because you were speaking to people when they were at home and they could talk.
There was that, and I think I also found my own pattern because I could have that space to be able to do that, because there wasn't working from home or any of that.
No.
And it wasn't, nobody was being nasty, but you just didn't want to be made
You
fun
didn't.
of, really.
I was going to say that we didn't talk about vulnerability back then, did we? Really?
No,
So,
no. But as
at
you
what
say, nobody likes being sold to, do
point?
they? So, and it wasn't sort of an environment where you had to hit the phone. So sometimes it would be an office of, say, 15, 16 people, but it would be deathly quiet. I'm like, oh, I don't want to pick up the phone because I don't know what I'm
Everyone's going to
saying.
hear what I'm saying, and you
And
knew
it
that
was
you could have those conversations, but you didn't want anyone listening in. I don't think I
like,
want anyone listening in necessarily.
no. And
Especially,
because you had to call people at their desks, really, because you couldn't get hold of mobile phone numbers like you can now. And
never
people were in offices. So yeah, it was just a different time.
was.
But yeah,
So
I found my feet,
at what
thankfully.
point, and obviously I know this personally, but at what point, so you can explain to our audience, did you just know that you were going to set up on your own?
Um, Probably about a year before I actually did it. I was thinking about it. I just got married and we bought a house in Southport. I was commuting to Manchester. Again, no working from home. So 5 days a week. I don't know how we did it, to be
No, I
honest.
did that.
We'd leave at 6 o'clock in the morning. I'd go to the gym in Manchester, then I'd do a full day, then we'd drive home. I just thought, I can't do this. It's not sustainable. I sort of pitched a business plan to the company I was working for to set up a Liverpool office or a satellite office, but they didn't really go for it. And then going through the motions of doing that business plan, I thought, well, this is a good idea. I'll
Yeah,
just do it myself.
yeah.
And I think that the business started to really grow and the culture changed. I just wasn't particularly happy. And I couldn't find a company closer to home that
Yeah,
I actually wanted to go and work for, that
that was better
held
than
the
you.
same values
Yeah.
or did the same sort of recruitment. So I just thought, you know what, I'll give it a go. And a few clients contacted me as soon as I'd left and said, oh, we would still want to work with you. And that was a big boost. Although I think in the run up to actually leaving and setting up on my own, it takes guts, right? To walk away from a salary. We just bought a house and all that stability, um and we went snowboarding for the first time with a massive group of friends, and I'd never done it before. And my plan was I was due a big lump of commission when I got back, get my notice in, and then I was going to go for it. I couldn't snowboard. I was terrible. I
That's funny.
ended up with concussion. I couldn't get on the lift. And my class, they were all French. Andy, my husband, had said to them, oh, this is Bridget, as in Bridget Jones, but they didn't get the joke. So as I finally made it up on the lift, on the drag lift, they go, bonjour, Bridget. And I was like,
Oh no.
And then everybody else sort of snowboarded down the mountain, and like the snowboard came off my feet. I lost my glove, and I just sat on the side of the mountain sobbing, going, I can't even snowboard. How am I going to set up a business on my own?
Hilarious.
Which is completely irrational, but that was where my head was at. Anyway, I went for it, and I'm so glad that I did. It's been a ride, I would say, over the last almost 20 years. But yeah,
so the timing was. So did you set up with Andy straight away? Because Andy's your husband.
no. So I sat up on my own, and the plan was to work solo, really. Although the day after I resigned, I found out I was pregnant.
Yes, I remember this. I remember.
Yeah, timing's everything. not that I would have got great maternity, but it was just,
On the
I
line.
just had to carry on.
Yeah.
So even I spoke to one of my clients actually who'd emailed and on a Blackberry. Do you remember Blackberries?
Okay.
Saying, "Oh, we'd like to set up an interview with such and such a candidate." So I called him, Paul. I still recruit for him now, and he just said, "What are you due to have a baby like any day?" I said, "Oh yeah, he's next to me. He's about 4 hours old." He said,
No
"Brilliant.
way.
Just put the phone down. We'll speak once you're back on your feet, but
That's
don't." It's
hilarious.
that fear, isn't it? Once you've sat up on your own, it's all on you for a while.
Yeah. The Fraser's now 18.
He's just turned 18, yes. He's
Right.
just gone to school in his new car today, so I'm like
It just, I'm amused because I remember when I'd had Lilia and I was literally, I'd had another cesarean, and that somebody tried ringing me 2 or 3 times and I kept dumping the call. And when I say just had, I mean back in the room hours after having her. And he said, I really need to speak to you. I need you to find me a new job. I need someone that I'd placed before. And he's like, really hot candidate. And I said, I've just had a C-section. I'll have to speak to you another time. And he's like, what's the C-section? And I'm like, oh, duh. I'll refer you to somebody if you don't even know what a C-section is. But yes,
Google it.
you just got, so this is now 2007, 2000,
2008, just going into
2008.
2008. And then obviously the
The
world dropped off a cliff.
Which it did. It was around the October, wasn't it? That, and because property and recruitment very similarly aligned. It was for anyone who isn't old enough to know, and we do know that there are audiences that probably were only just born in those years. It was when the subprime mortgage market collapsed, the Lehman Brothers went under, and it had such a huge impact. It was this tsunami effect across. It was
Yeah.
horrific, wasn't it? That, and that's when you and I really we did a lot of coaching through DWP that year, didn't we?
We did. Met some interesting, I was thinking about this the other night. Met some interesting people
It was a
over the course of
game-changing
that.
time though, because you just set up. My business was 3 years old when that happened, and I just had Lilia. Lilia was born in 2007, so I'd only just come back from mat leave, and then had a sort of 3-4 months of glory, and then I was like, "What? What do you mean redundant? What's going on?" And then you and I we must have been going, "Oh my God." You
Yes,
Fraser, I've got
completely.
Izzy and Lils going, what are we going to do? And then you had obviously introduced me, and I actually look back on that time, and whilst it was super scary because there was no furlough, there was no support as a business owner, there was literally nothing. But we had this amazing opportunity to feed our families by being paid for the exec coaching that we did, which was basically white collar exec coaching through the DWP. I think it really honed me as a recruiter at the right time. I don't know about you, but I felt
Yeah.
created compassion. I had to really listen to what that person needed from me.
You really had to think on your feet because you didn't know who was going to come through the door next, really. I had, I remember an MD of a house builder who'd been on 500,000 a year, and then another person who edited pornography for a living. And it's like, where do you go from
They were so
that you just did?
obscure.
Completely.
Yeah, I remember one because we had to go into the job centres, and that in itself was an eye opener. I mean, it makes me sound very privileged, but it really wasn't. I'd never done it before, and I remember one morning in Darwin. That was one of my job centres.
Your patch.
It was my patch. I interviewed an FD, and he was so humble. He said, and he actually said, I've been so arrogant all my life that I've always said no to recruiters. He said, and now the recruiters aren't returning my calls because I need a job. So I know that he went on this journey. And the same day, the next person that walked through the door was a zoologist. And I was like, what the heck's a zoologist? Work in zoos, apparently. It was a terribly, but I took out of it, and you and I became super close that year, and we have been ever since. Like this, where really people really came together, and there was a lot of humanity, even
There
though
was,
we weren't
yeah.
talking
Even
about
though
that.
it felt bleak.
It felt very bleak. I mean, I was literally selling furniture. I had to sell my baby's cart, my baby's pram. That things, would I have kept them? Who knows? But I mean, my husband was an estate agent at the time, so we literally had no income for about 4 months and no support.
Just had to do what you needed to do. But I think that comes back to one of the core traits I really believe as a recruiter. You've got to be resilient.
Yeah, you
You
do.
have to. you've got to think on your feet and you've got to be resilient. And I think we definitely leaned into that.
I think I was going to say, if you cut us down the middle, we definitely got resilience. I'm so sorry. I realised that we went on a total different tangent to you explaining how Andy became part of the business.
Okay, so well, that was, I suppose, the continuation of 2008. So it took a long time for the property market to recover. At that time, he was working for a property developer in Manchester. And we're coming into 2011 by this point. The recruitment side had started to recover, but the banks still weren't really lending, so there wasn't anything for him to develop. And he just said, I cannot drive to Manchester every day and sit there and do nothing. I've done it for 2 years. I'm just my brain's rotting.
Yeah.
So I had this brainwave. Well, if the business is starting to do well, why don't you take redundancy, come and join me? You can play, he's keen golfer, you can play golf, business develop, and do the things that I don't like. I didn't like invoicing, didn't like chasing invoices, the statutory, so all the compliance, didn't enjoy it, but he's a detail person, so that suits him.
Good combination.
Perfectly. Definitely. So he said, okay, yeah, I'll do that. That was in 2011. He's still here.
He's still here now, but I love that. It's the blend, isn't it? And the fact that he's never been attracted back to the industry says an awful lot. How do you, and you don't need to impart the personal side, but how do you create a boundary? Because I imagine there are a lot of people out there that are either working for or are working with, as in working for a husband and wife team, or maybe siblings, or maybe it's somebody that is listening now that is thinking about setting up and thinking, well, maybe if my spouse comes on board with me, that's an immediate way. Like, what was your boundary setting, and then what would your hindsight advice be?
Hindsight, don't do it. No. It took us, it did take a while to find our groove, if you like, and for him to find his place. So I think he started.
Does he know his
place? Pardon?
Does he know his place? I'm joking. To joke. It's a very bad wife.
Some days. He came into the office on his first day and ended up driving home without me in a paddy because he wanted to. It's like a dog marking his territory. That's how I'm going to put it.
Yeah.
Right, let's rebrand. I'm going to reorganize the furniture. It's like, you've been here 2 hours. That's not what we need. But he, I suppose, is a proud man, and he wanted to make his mark on it. The idea was that he wouldn't fear necessarily. He would use his contacts to business develop. But there was one day, sort of probably 6 or 8 months, he had his own office. And he came out of the office and just said, I've just done a deal. So, what do you mean you've just done a deal? I've just placed a candidate. It's quite easy, really, isn't it? It's like, and that was how it started. So with no training, he just started to recruit within general practice. So we have, in terms of boundaries, we operate very different, obviously same sector within the built environment, but very different desks around technical, and he's more general practice investment development side, which is his background.
I meant boundaries, not dissimilar to the route going down comically, which is, how do you differentiate between your relationship in work and your relationship as a husband and wife?
It's quite tricky, because I think I would talk about the business day in, day out, whereas Andy is very much, I'm not working now, so I'm not going to talk about it, because he likes to switch off completely. Okay. And if I won't switch off, he'll go and play golf, and that's all. And I don't play golf, and I have no desire to. I'd say that's probably our boundary. But it is, I think, on paper, for anyone who is thinking of doing it, on paper it sounds amazing. Why could it not work? We're both pouring into the same pot, if you like, in terms of finances. We've both got the same goals and outcomes to support family, or whatever it is that we're working towards. It's in practice, it's quite different, and it can be quite challenging.
I'm sure it is. I mean, I really respect actually what he does to go. I kudos to him that he can switch off. I'm brilliant at switching off at the weekends, but Monday to Friday, I live and breathe key recruitment. And it's like, it's because I love what I do. This is my life's work. And it's literally, I call it my third child. I'm obsessed with it. And it always has been like that. I can't see that ever changing now. But I can't imagine being with somebody that goes, don't want to talk about it. Whereas, you know,
It can be quite frustrating, I think, as well, because when you have that downtime and you're away from the business, that's when you have your ideas and
100%. So
yeah.
you then have to wait, you go and channel that yourself and you, wherever your brain dump journal,
I've
what
already decided what I'm doing and
I
we're
was going to
doing
say,
it. It's off we
you
go.
can tell him when he turns the computer back on in the morning. Now, I think that's really important. And the thing is, it is becoming more and more apparent that I think, you know, you only have to sort of sit on LinkedIn for a day or so to see the litmus test that large corporate, big scale recruitment companies are fading because they can't turn the ship quick enough. It's Titanic, isn't it? And so I think the premise that there will be many more startups where it will be founder led, probably solo, probably, you know, very small enterprises, which is fantastic. It's exciting. That's my bread and butter, really. And likelihood is that there will be people listening that probably might do it with their spouses because, you know, there's whether it's they've come from recruitment, maybe they'll do the legal, the operate, who knows what that dynamic will look like. So I think that's really important sort of feedback. And I realize it's always subjective and joking aside, but actually having two, you know, people that are possibly competitive but know their skills and their strengths and respecting the home and saying Andy's staying home, you're saying, well, this is the home that we work pays for, so I want to carry on channeling into it.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
No, it is. It's and don't get me wrong, it's good fun. I mean, the business we did have a larger business
Good.
years back. We had 28 staff at one point. And that was really hard because that brings obviously different challenges. And again, our roles were quite clear and quite defined then. But you did find that that really impacted on family life. And you were coming home and thought, oh, this person's not performing, or we've got a headache over here, or so yeah, that I think put a different dynamic on things. But we definitely had each other's back.
Mm.
Um,
So it's having that overarching goal setting. You talk about value, you have the same values, the same goals ultimately. You clearly have defined roles. So whether we're talking about whether when you were at your super scale at 28 heads, which again that might resonate with some of our listeners or those that are going to keep it micro business. But the common theme there is that he does what he does well, you do what you do well, and you stay within your lanes. I think that's
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, when we were larger, we worked with a couple of non-execs as well, one which you kindly introduced.
it. Hello to her.
And and that was invaluable as well because where Andy and I didn't see eye to eye, you had somebody acting who only had the interest of the business,
Business.
not personalities or egos or who's right, who's wrong. It's what's
Yeah.
best for the business. And yeah, that was really valuable.
There's
So
all,
I'd say that's something to consider for
mm,
anyone looking, even if it's just a friend that you're looking to set up with.
yeah, I do think
Um,
I think yeah, I wouldn't necessarily advocate bringing in a third sort of business partner necessarily, but I think having a NED or an external advisor, now that could be a
mhm.
friend who's an accountant, it could be a friend who's a lawyer, you know, all these, I would say somebody who's in a professional capacity because they'll understand the mechanics of your business. I don't think it matters whether you're a one person or 100-person business. I think it's so important to have
Yes.
because it's objective, it's not emotional. And
Yeah.
whatever anyone says, whatever guest I've ever had on, what we do, we're emotional about it because it's our passion.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. And they can help prevent you making some very costly mistakes and save you a lot of time and heartache.
28 heads, I imagine, is in there somewhere is a very costly, you know, investment in people that did or didn't work out for whatever reasons. It's like I still can't believe that was, you know, the same business because you can imagine.
No, my life was completely different back then. You know, we employed my mother-in-law as a nanny because the kids were only really small. And yeah, that all sort of turned on its head. And I'm glad that I did it, but
Yeah.
I'm also glad that we've moved to a more boutique model now. That
You'd have
just suits where I
you'd have
am.
always had that itch if you'd never scaled because I used
Exactly that.
years. You were really so focused on that. and understandably so. But I think, again, I'd like to think the narrative has changed around what scale actually means and looks like now, which isn't just headcount anymore. It's obviously, for me, it's around revenue and profit.
It is. That's definitely shifted. I think there's, I don't know, a lot of things that we've got to be thankful for after COVID. As awful as it was at that time, my life has definitely changed since then. So we started to have dinner with the kids every night because we were working from home, and family life just improved vastly. We had time to slow down and actually enjoy life, and you're not commuting, and you're and yeah, that, I suppose, that really altered for us.
It's funny, isn't it? COVID for so many people, was devastating, and I know a couple of people who lost their lives to COVID, who on the outside looking in was pretty healthy people. But I think you've got to look back on something that's such a significant event that affected everybody, but all differently. That I think it fast forwarded a lot of the changes around hybrid, and that what was important to people. And of course, you then had your own personal situation with your mom, losing your mom, and then you had your own health issues. So you look back and it's like two different lives, Caroline.
It is, and I don't really recognize the person that I was compared to where I am now. So yeah, unfortunately I was diagnosed with cancer, which is pretty scary. But I would say I quite like more people to have an event like that, obviously survive and come through the other side, but doesn't half make you look at your life and make you realize what's important, what's not. I think that was a pivotal, so that was just pre-COVID. But that was a pivotal point. You very kindly sent me a book, I don't know if you remember, The Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Oh, did I?
Am I allowed to swear? I've just sworn on your podcast.
Oh, no, you're allowed to swear. Fine, don't worry. Did I send you that? I went through a phase of, I love him on Instagram and stuff. I'm so pleased I sent you that.
Because of the type of treatment I had to be isolated from my kids for up to 3 weeks because I was radioactive, which was horrendous because they were 9 and 7, I think, at the time. And trying to explain to them what was going on. But I took this book into hospital with me and read it. Why am I so bothered about everybody at work that doesn't really care about me? I'm here because I'm ill through stress. I'm not doing it anymore. And I came out of that hospital with just a fire in my belly. I'm going to change this. I'm not happy. I don't enjoy it. I've done it. I've scaled a business and it's not for me. Thank you very much. So every time someone left, we didn't replace them, and we just sort of gradually it petered down, but then profits went up. So
the irony, right?
What's not to love? Yeah. Less is more.
Yeah, the math ain't mathing.
Exactly. Because I was just on this hamster wheel going, we'll recruit more people. And I think there's so many people in recruitment fall into that trap or have fallen into that trap.
Haven't, but I do think I think the leveler has been the last 2 years, and I think thank you for sharing that, by the way. And for the audience, you have been in full recovery now, haven't you?
Yeah. Over 5 years clear.
Amazing. Amazing. And you're the picture of health, Caroline. You really are. And I sent you that, and that for me is like, what you experience. And I know what you're saying, but having gone through a significant life event, which was who you met, Matt, he came out as gay, and having spent 17 years married to this man, it was grief. I had to go through a grieving process, the life I thought I had with him. So it wasn't a physical event, it was an emotional event that created a bomb under my whole family and our businesses that we ran together. And I could not agree more with the notion of what you're saying, that I think no matter where you're listening to this and where you're at in your life, if you go through something that is a bolt from the blue, it literally pulls the rug from under your feet. It just makes you reassess what is actually important, and you realize then what your North Star is.
Exactly that. I was so concerned pre-being ill with people thinking, oh, if the business fails, what will people think? And as I'm lying in hospital, it's going, what is important? My kids, my family, that's what's important. And
Health.
if you're not healthy, then you've got nothing anyway. And I say, I came out of that hospital and I just thought, I don't care what anybody else thinks. This is my life.
Yeah.
It's a shame it took cancer to make me realize that, but hey,
You might
probably similar to your life event. It just makes you.
it's you talk about resilience. I mean, I talk about the word fortitude, because it's when you hit with a life event like that, there are some people that it'll wash over them, and it takes them, and they never recover from it. And there are other people, which I think that's our relationship went into a totally different drive, that I'm going through this like a wall, and I'm going to push through it, whatever happens, come what may. And that's not to say that those that don't, and it does take them eventually, and I've got such compassion, because who's to say what someone's mental health will be? You just don't know. But I think you'd have reached these conclusions anyway with COVID. That was not long after that, and entering the stage of your career that you're in now, which is, we are officially veterans. Once you hit plus 20 years.
We need a better phrase than that. That sounds really old.
Okay, it does. Let's say experts, gurus. I'm joking.
I'll be
I actually asked Claude, because she's my new best friend, because I've moved from ChatGPT.
Claudia.
She'll rename her Claudia. And I've been cheating on ChatGPT for the last few weeks, just to see, and I much prefer Claude. Sorry, but I'm not on commission or anything. And I asked her to tell me how I can, where should I position myself? And she called me a thought leader, and I was like, I know exactly, and I'm owning it. So I literally fed in my LinkedIn and my basically, which is your CV, isn't it? And I was like, that's where you're at when you are at this stage in your career. And I think you'd have reached that conclusion anyway. And
I think it would have taken me a lot longer. And I'd have probably gone through a lot more pain and angst.
Possibly.
So I'm glad that those things saved me.
So as you are now in this thought leadership level of your career, I know this, but tell the audience what's coming in the near future.
So next week I'm starting recording my own podcast, which is very exciting. So speaking to senior level leaders across the industry, across all sorts of sectors. So really exciting. So my first guests are from the data center industry, which is a very hot topic at the moment, and also CEO of a large engineering organization. So no, I'm really looking forward to doing that.
I'm very happy that you have confirmed that. And that's very exciting. Yeah, I mean, data centers is like one of the key growth markets, isn't it? I've seen that. What did I see somebody show on LinkedIn the other week about how much investment is actually happening across UK, Europe, and America? It's
crazy. I'm not going to pretend to understand why we're storing all this data.
And I'm just like, is there going to be any water left in the planet? I'm not really sure, if you believe all those rabbit hole videos that I tend to get sent by my daughter, who's quite woke about these things. Every time you share something on AI, it's going to take this much water, and I'm like, ooh, I know, I understand.
Yes. No, but it'll be interesting. Maybe my guest will be able to shed some light on that.
I'd like to think so. Well, we'll definitely. I'm hoping then, because we record this in advance, that by the time we share this in a few weeks' time, if your podcast is live, we'll make sure the links are attached. If you're listening, haven't done that, so it's not yet live, make sure you are following Caroline, whose profile is on this episode, and you can then see what Caroline's podcast is doing. And I think those are going to be really interesting. Sounds like they'll be interesting to non-property people as well, because it's topics
100%. Yeah. So I've got somebody who's heavily involved in the football stadium world as well, which is quite exciting.
That's very exciting. Now that is like, yeah, I'm all for that. This is the thing. Your industry is just super exciting because it's interesting. I've always been fascinated by it. Well, you have been a fabulous guest, as I knew you would be.
Thank you for being so gentle with me on my first ever podcast.
This is the thing. I want our audience to hear real stories of founders who, we often hide behind our profiles on LinkedIn, but the reality is we are all humans. We all have things that happen, shit happens, brilliant things happen, terrible things happen, and it's about just being kinder to each other and, creating an industry where we have just a lot more love and a lot more compassion. So thank
Need
you.
that in the world, that'd be nice. Thank you.
Appreciate you joining me on the Recruiters Recruitment Podcast.